Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the third episode of In-Depth Guides. I hope you guys are ready for a marathon. Nagaise is today, and Nagaise has been one of the most meta-warping Tems since it got its trait Decidora, which I think is since it released, but whatever. I haven't played since then. Here's the disclaimers. You can stop the video if you want to read them quick. But we'll dive right in. So Nagaise is mental water. Honestly, it's a horrible defensive type. It has 5 weaknesses, and one of those is a 4 times weakness. So, defensively, Nagaise is awful. Even though these 5 resists look juicy, it's not worth it to have this many weaknesses. It basically like interacts with every type in the game almost. It's kind of crazy. Um, if we look at Nagaise's stats, you'll see it looks like it's supposed to be a really speedy, like special attack nuker with decent special defense. Like actually, that's really solid special defense just to top it off. Just with a pretty frail HP, low stamina, attack which it doesn't need, and on the lower side of defense, but it's still not awful. However, even with these stats though, the typical Nagaise spread plays the exact opposite of this, but we'll get into that later. And by later, I basically mean now. But Nagaise has 2 traits. Both of them are signature. One of them is Water Custodian, which is actually nowadays a cool trait. It's kind of like Electric Custodian that Reignit and Zyzer have, where it redirects all water techniques targeting the ally to hit Nagaise instead. And if a technique is successfully redirected, Nagaise actually gets +2 special attack. So you can run this on a team with a whole bunch of Tems that are really weak to water, and then you just throw Nagaise on the field. Your Tem weak to water can't get hit unless it's a spread move, and then Nagaise also gets a damage buff. So it's pretty cool. But pulling it off can be a bit difficult, especially if you have a Nagaise in the back. People will play around it. And then this is just like a disclaimer or increase in water activate if the holder and the ally get hit. So basically, if there's a spread attack used, Nagaise will still get the boost. Or if only the holder gets hit by a water technique. Let's say if your ally is already dead and there's a water technique being used, then Nagaise would still get the boost. It's kind of goofy that way, but it does work sometimes. It recently got reworked and hasn't been experimented with too much, so it's hard to say. But its other trait is Deceit Aura, which is the reason why Nagaise sees so much use and the reason why it is so meta warping. So Deceit Aura, if any of you have played Pokemon and are familiar with it, it's like Trick Room. It flips the entire speed chart upside down, so the slowest Tems go first. And it's only for the first 4 turns that Nagaise is on the battlefield. Each turn that Nagaise starts the turn on the field, it loses 15% of its HP. If Nagaise swaps out, the speed order is still reversed, and the HP loss doesn't activate after. If you survive the 4 turns, then you don't lose the health anymore, but also the speed doesn't get flipped. I mean, the wiki explains it better than I can here, but I'm just kind of reading it out loud. It activates when the holder starts the turn on the battlefield, so if Nagaise swaps in, the turn order will not be flipped, and it will not lose HP. But the next turn, then it will lose HP, and the turn order will be flipped, as long as it has turns remaining. The 4-turn limit does count down, though, even if Nagaise swaps out. But not if it swaps in. So, I'll kind of talk about Nagaise's impact on the meta a little bit later once we get into the builds. But I just wanted to give a brief overview of the trait for now, and now we'll go into the techniques. I'll touch on quick. Tental is actually, it's a non-fully evolved Tem, but it's actually viable in itself due to the trait Avenger. I might do a trade on it or a video on it like way later on once I finished every other Tem. But I love Tental. It's actually cool. Here's Avenger quick, but that's not the main point of the video. Okay, so Nagaise's moves. Psywave is actually a cool move, but it's more of a support one. And in both cases of traits, Nagaise kind of wants to deal damage. So Psywave's not great, but that's just on Nagaise. It's still a cool move. Hypnosis gives Nagaise a sleep option. It's on almost every single set. Kicks, story move. Tenderness, good move, not on Nagaise. Energy Manip allows for a stab priority option for the Water Custodian set that wants speed. So the option's there, but it's kind of a weak move unless you have it with synergy. Telekinetic's a physical move, you don't want it. Beta Burst is the main mental attack you'll have on both sets. Psy Surge is low priority, so under Deceit Aura, where the speed order is flipped, Psy Surge will be super fast. And it's worth touching on that with Deceit Aura, unlike Trick Room in Pokemon, priority is affected. Since high priority moves, which is the 3 arrows here, have 1.5 speed and 1.5 times speed multiplier, and a low priority has a 0.5 speed modifier. So if Nagaise has 200 speed and it was using a low priority move, it would have effectively 100 speed. And if it was using a high prio, it would have 300. Just for easy numbers. So essentially, on the Deceit Aura set, once Psy Surge is up, it's almost always going to be the first thing that moves. So it's a very quick attack, and it's still super strong, and it's stamina efficient. So Humiliating Slap is a really good support move, but I don't think Nagaise is a good user of it. It's a physical move, so the damage itself it deals would be negligible. And Nagaise just has other better moves to slot. Plus, Nagaise doesn't want to fit a support role. It could be kind of interesting to have an H-Slap and Psywave set where you can debuff either on the physical or special side, but that would be kind of like a gimmicky set. It's not the ones you'll typically see. High Pressure Water recently got buffed, so now it has priority with synergy and has 2 turns of burn with synergy as well. So it's actually a very good move, but you're only going to want to run it on the Water Custodian set, which I'll touch on later. Ninja Jutsu, while technically, since it's higher prio, it could have, it's very high prio, it could have some use. I would never run it on either set. Nagaise's Fury, this is Nagaise's main water move, its signature. It's a high stamina cost, but it's a spread damage that does a spread move that does 100 damage to both opponents, which is really solid. It has mental synergy, but don't get tempted. It's just a slight damage boost. But having double mental on the board with Nagaise isn't going to be great because it's already bad type chart. So it has very niche use. Sometimes, recently with Adoro being so strong, people will run Adoro and Nagaise on the same field so that you can get a really fast Denigrate and also have synergy for Nagaise Fury. But it's not a great combo. Black Hole is a physical move. Kind of falls under support moves again. I wouldn't run it. Even though it's low priority, it's a physical move, and Nagaise does not have good physical attack. It's meant to be a special attacker, so I wouldn't run the move. Awful Song, while it looks decent for neutral coverage, Nagaise doesn't need it. I wouldn't recommend running it. Confiscate, it's just, you don't need it. It's a niche move you just won't ever use. Block is a defensive move. Nagaise wants to deal damage. Strangle, it's kind of interesting because people call this Strangle Prio. I'm actually not sure what it's called. It's just like the lowest possible Prio in the game, where it normally moves after everything else regardless of speed tier. One Ender Deceit Aura actually goes first, before swaps. So you can deal damage before swaps if you run Strangle on Nagaise, but it'll still be overexerted the next turn. So I wouldn't ever run the move, but technically you can do some shenanigans by finishing off low health opponents under Deceit Aura if they try and swap out. That's it for the moves. So we'll jump over to the bulk of the video, which is going to be the move sets. So you'll notice here there's actually not a whole lot of stuff you can do with Nagaise. It's basically got two distinct sets. One of them is the main one that's everywhere, and that is the Deceit Aura. These are basically the only four moves you're going to see. It's the best four moves for it to run. You'll always want to run Heavy Armor, because Heavy Armor reduces Nagaise's speed even further to make it faster under Deceit Aura, while also reducing its damage taken. So if we look at the TV spread here, we invest a lot in HP, a decent amount in stamina. This could actually be reduced down to... I actually calculated this wrong when I was making the set. It could actually be reduced down to 67. And you can have more thrown in HP. Because the rotation of moves you're going to want to use is going to be Beta Burst, Nagaise Fury, and then if you were to click another mental move, you would almost always click Psy Surge over Beta Burst. I suppose you could go 70 stamina if you wanted to opt for the clicking Hypnosis instead of Psy Surge. That would be really viable as well. I'll just do that because I like that option better. But Nagaise actually recently lost a tool from its kit, which was Lullaby, which was a low priority sleep move. So now it has to use Hypnosis if it wants to put its opponents to sleep. But yeah, so take note that the speed SV is actually lowered to 1 on Nagaise, just so it can be as slow as possible, because it's actually got a very high base speed. So Nagaise with 1 speed SV hits 132 speed. But with Heavy Armor, you'll actually see it goes down to 112 speed. So if you want to underspeed Nagaise, or I should quotes outspeed Nagaise when it has Deceit Aura, you would have to have 111 effective speed or less. Which even besides Guldur, which is the slowest Tem in the game, I forget if it's Xyzer is the slowest fully evolved, or this besides Guldur, and then it's Anatan. So even an Anatan with base speed gets outsped by Deceit Aura and Nagaise, which is kind of crazy. So you have to even lower speed on the third slowest fully evolved Tem in the game to outspeed Nagaise. So it's actually really crazy value. And that is why Nagaise is incredibly meta warping. The best counterplay to Nagaise is to ban it, because if you're running a team with any amount of speed investment, Nagaise will outspeed you and be able to either deal damage or whatever it wants to do, Hypnosis. And not only that, but it also makes the ally go slow. So you pair Nagaise with a Stone Ball user, like Turok is a common one, and it can threaten out electric types, crystal types, and technically toxic types with a Feather Gatling from Turok as well. So there's so many crazy combos that you can do to just invest, just to threaten out your opponents due to the insane value you get from Deceit Aura. And not only are you the fastest thing by having 0 and basically negative speed, but you also are super bulky because you can invest all these extra TVs and HP, and you even get the 10% damage reduction from Heavy Armor. So that's kind of the issue. Even with a super effective move, it's not often that you can kill a Nagaise. Like if we just use Two-Vine's a common one. And if I use Crystal Plume Gatling with max attack, and I've got, let's just say max HP, because I opted for special attack max and then HP fill on Nagaise, but you could very easily switch these around. It's completely optional. But even with the max attack Crystal Plume onto a Nagaise, it only deals 72% damage. Now, you have to be aware or remember that Deceit Aura does make Nagaise lose 15% health every turn. So to one-shot Nagaise, you only have to deal 85% of its health on the first turn. But even that's a pretty difficult task if you're not able to get an electric hit off. So that's kind of where the issues happen. But on the flip side of things, there is a faster set for Nagaise, and that's the Water Custodian set. We already touched on what Water Custodian does. Like, if you can get that special attack boost, Nagaise can be super threatening. And it also kind of offers that support of kind of eating the water move for your allies. So here you definitely want to hit the 77 stamina breakpoint because you want to be able to beta Fury beta as your 3-turn rotation. The speed breakpoint here of 273 outspeeds max speed Nesla, which Nesla's pretty common, and there are plenty of people that do run it max or very close to max speed, and you don't want to get outsped with a Thunderstrike and get one shot, so it's a good breakpoint to hit. And it's Nagaise doesn't outspeed anything faster than that counters it, and it also doesn't need to. It doesn't like high pressure water is a good move for priority, but it's not like it can get a huge value from the priority. Like if you just hit 232, you almost don't need more speed than that for priority. I filled the rest in HP here with just Spadef being the extra TVs left over, but I also made an alternative set because as you probably noticed, I put Rock Shield as the gear. So Water Custodian Nagaise really doesn't have any good items. You can put stamina items on it if they're available, but there's so many times that want to eat stamina items that they're usually not available, and they certainly wouldn't be put on a Nagaise. So like Fake Beard, Sweatband are really good options. Even Bait's okay. And like Marbles is good if you don't have any Tem with that as well. But what Rock Shield does is it allows you to eat certain hits with like 0 defensive investment. Because right here, oh no, that was the other calc. But Nagaise can live a CPG from a max attack 2 Vian just with Rock Shield and no HP invest. So it's not like amazing by any means, but it's some item that you'll get value from. Because like Lightning Rod, you wouldn't get any, still wouldn't survive any electric hits that you'd want to. Tuckma Mask is an option. Tinfoil Hat if you really wanted, but I don't think you're going to want to bring in a Water Custodian Nagaise against a digital team. So Rock Shield's basically the main one, and it's mainly for the 2 Vine matchup as well. But I did make this alternative, slightly bulkier build with the same idea in mind of just Rock Shield, Water Custodian, same moves. I just changed the TVs around, took some out of special attack, and put it in HP so that it can even take a CPG from a Chimerian and a Gialis as well. Or a Crystal Bite from a Gialis, which is actually, I think, the highest damage single target crystal physical in the game. It's super specific, but you'd be surprised how many times I calc for it. So these are kind of the main sets. Like the Deceit Aura is the one you almost always see, unless your opponent has stuff like Mudred. Like Crystal Deluge users are some of the best partners for Nagaise, and Mudred is one of them because Mudred's weak to water, and Nagaise can actually eat the water hits with the Water Custodian, and then Mudred still gets the Deluge synergy. Hedgen, like you could see like Hellfire cores with the Water Custodian Nagaise, Hedgen Drakash, maybe even Fire Chromion, because not only are they super weak to water and Nagaise can eat those water hits with Custodian, but also they give Nagaise a high pressure water synergy, which is kind of cool. So like on any like modern burn teams, I would say that Nagaise is actually a really good pick for it. But like Decidora, there's actually because it's so prevalent, so many people account for it in their team building and run multiple counters to it. So you'll have Tems with Frond Whip, which is a low priority, super strong nature move that can one-shot Nagaise. Electro Punch users, though there's only a couple of them. Otherwise, stuff that's just super bulky or resists Nagaise's stabs. It's like just any crystals, basically. Rotten Goo is another low priority move that hits Nagaise super effective. It doesn't one-shot it, though. So, I mean, there's ways to play around Nagaise, but being forced to build them on any team you build just to account for it so you don't have to ban it as the first thing in ban phase is kind of what makes Nagaise strong. You either ban it or you have build your team so that it's slow enough that you can still beat Nagaise regardless. And that's just incredibly difficult to do because even if you're running a Tem with Electro Punch, like say Ragnet, that Ragnet has to at least live a Stone Ball from a Turok and hope that the Nagaise stays in and challenges it. Otherwise, if the Nagaise swaps out, the Stone Ball still goes first, your Ragnet loses like 90% of its health, and Nagaise can come back later on and still ruin your day. So, I think that's mostly everything. We covered good partners for kind of both, because like this was the Hellfire Core, Mudrid, and here is basically any Stone Ball user. Other slower Tems, like it pairs decently well with Anatan and some other slow Tem. Tyrannac if it's like frightening. Because I had the slow Tems pulled up here. Gulder used to be one of the best partners for it. But yeah, like, you kind of get the idea. There's otherwise any time with low priority moves it pairs well with Decidora. That's kind of why bulky offense is super strong because the guy shuts down hyper offense teams. But that's just one of many reasons. Nagai's counters, like I said, Electro Punch, Frond Whip. Yeah, I think I covered everything. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe learned a little something. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.